The sun was just beginning to rise over the San Diego Naval Base, casting streaks of gold across the water as crews prepared for the day's operations. Families gathered near the docks, taking photos, sharing hugs, and watching ships shimmer under the early light. Amid the bustling activity, Tom Harris, a retired Navy veteran in his late 60s, walked slowly toward the boarding ramp of the USS Henderson. His steps were steady but marked by the limp he had earned during a rescue mission decades earlier. In his hand, he held the faded reunion invitation, a simple card that meant more to him than most people would ever understand. Tom wore his old Navy jacket, the fabric softened with age. On its sleeve was a patch, tattered, sun-bleached, but still distinct, the emblem of Rescue Unit Echo 7, a special operations team known only to a small circle of high-ranking officers and those who served in it. For Tom, that patch was a symbol of brotherhood, sacrifice, and the hardest days of his life. As he approached the ramp, a young Navy officer stepped in front of him with a stern face. Lieutenant Governor Brooks, fresh out of academy and determined to prove his discipline, lifted a hand sharply. "Sir, this area is restricted. No civilians permitted beyond this point." Tom paused. "Son, I'm not just a civilian. I served on this ship's predecessor. I'm here for the reunion." He lifted the invitation slightly. Brooks barely glanced at it. His tone hardened. "These events require prior clearance. I can't let you board without authorization. Please step back." A few people nearby turned to look. Tom felt heat rise in his face, not from anger alone, but from embarrassment. He'd given decades of his life to the Navy. He'd watched men die. He'd earned every medal and every scar. But now he was being treated like an intruder on a ship he had once risked his life to protect. "I have clearance," Tom repeated patiently. "Check your list." Brooks shook his head. "I don't have time to verify every story. Please move aside." The words cut deeper than Brooks intended. Tom's grip tightened on his cane. He had faced storms, bullets, and explosions, but somehow the dismissiveness of a young officer, someone who should have known better, stung more than he ever expected. At that moment, a group of officers walked toward the deck, led by Admiral Jonathan Rogers, a man known throughout the Navy for his stern command and impeccable memory. He was reviewing the morning schedule with his staff, barely glancing at the crowd, until he noticed the commotion by the ramp. His gaze drifted to Tom, then froze on the patch stitched to the veteran's sleeve. It was as if time stopped for the Admiral. His expression shifted. First shock, then disbelief, then something like deep, old respect. He stepped closer, eyes locked on Tom. The officers trailing him paused, confused by their commander's abrupt halt. "Is that?" the Admiral whispered. His voice cracked. He recognized the patch instantly. And he knew exactly who Tom Harris was. Part 2 to 500 words. For a long moment, Admiral Jonathan Rogers simply stared at the patch on Tom Harris' sleeve. Memories he had buried years ago came rushing back with the force of a tidal wave. The stormy night in the Gulf, the overturned carrier, the fire, the impossible rescue. And then the face of the man who had pulled him from the collapsing deck. "Echo 7, the Admiral murmured, taking a step closer. "Sir, is your name Tom Harris?" Tom blinked, surprised. "Yes, Admiral, we served in the same era." But Rogers wasn't hearing the rest. He removed his hat, a rare gesture of profound respect. "You didn't just serve in the same era. You saved my life." Lieutenant Governor Brooks, who had been standing rigidly between them, slowly lowered his arm. Confusion washed over him as he looked back and forth between the two men. "Sir, Admiral, I." "Stand down, Lieutenant," the Admiral ordered, his voice firm but not angry. "You're looking at a hero." Brooks stepped aside immediately, face flushed with embarrassment. The Admiral placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. "I never forgot your face. Or that mission. Half our team didn't make it out. You dragged me through fire and debris when you could barely walk yourself. They told me you retired quietly, refused promotions, didn't want recognition." Tom smiled humbly. "Recognition wasn't why I served, sir." Rogers shook his head. "Maybe not, but you deserve it." He gestured for the officers behind him to follow. "Escort Mr. Harris to the ship. He is the guest of honor today." The young sailors snapped to attention, saluting Tom with genuine admiration. Some had clearly heard stories of Echo 7, their impossible missions, their fearless rescues, their sacrifices, but they had never expected to meet one of them. As Tom walked toward the ramp, the Admiral matched his pace. Families nearby whispered, realizing they were watching something historic. Cameras lifted. Even the seagulls overhead seemed quieter, as if the entire base was holding its breath. Inside the ship, the reunion committee, retired officers, veterans, and active duty sailors, quickly gathered when they heard who had arrived. A table had already been arranged for guest sign-ins and refreshments, but now an officer hurriedly replaced the banner to include Tom's name at the top. Gov. Lieutenant Governor. Brooks approached slowly, his posture stiff. Sir, I owe you an apology. I misjudged you. I was just doing my job but... Tom raised a hand gently. Son, it's all right. Just remember something. Uniforms fade, ranks change, but respect for those who came before you shouldn't. Brooks swallowed hard and nodded. Yes, sir. The Admiral guided Tom to the main deck where a small podium stood. We're honoring you today, he said. Not because of medals or missions, but because you showed the kind of courage that defines this nation. As the ship's horn echoed across the harbor, sailors formed a line, saluting the veteran who had once saved their admiral and, in many ways, shaped the Navy's legacy. For the first time in years, Tom felt truly seen, respected, and remembered. The sea breeze brushed against his jacket, rustling the old patch, no longer just a worn piece of cloth, but a symbol of a hero welcomed home.